We begin this hour with breaking news from the 2016 campaign trail. CBS News has confirmed that Donald Trump has chosen Indiana Governor Mike Pence to be his running mate. A Republican official close to the situation said a formal call was scheduled for today. The two are expected to appear together at an event tomorrow right here in New York City. Here to break down the news, we have CBSN political contributor and former 2008 McCain campaign manager Rick Davis, CBSN political contributor and Republican strategist Leslie Sanchez, as well as Vox senior campaign correspondent Liz Plank. Thank you all for being here. We got the band back together just for this.
We're so patriotic.
Exactly. All right, so let me just get your reaction, starting with you, Rick.
Look, I think this is the safe bet. The entire political strategy that Trump has is to win Midwestern states. Christie, bad at Midwestern states. Newt Gingrich, bad for Midwestern states. Pence, terrific for Midwestern states. So I think he's going family values. He's going conservative message. He's going Midwest. And this is the tell of the decade. So I think it actually makes a lot of sense. And by the way, it'll keep the delegates at the convention happy, because he's a social conservative, you know, he's a family man, and he's an economic conservative. So it's good news for the convention at large.
Leslie, your take as well. This does seem to balance out the Trump ticket.
Sure, and definitely for that reason. You had a lot of delegates that we were hearing that wanted to do their committee business in terms of rules and platform, and they were going to get on planes and get out because they just weren't not that excited about it. This may change that dynamic. They wanted to see a tried and true Republican be part of this ticket, and it will help at least somewhat with the party loyalists who are going to have to get in the field certainly come November.
And Liz?
Yeah, absolutely. I think balancing out is really, really the key here. He's not necessarily an exciting choice, but he's a safe one, and that's what that's what his campaign needs right now. Someone to balance out his tendency to be flamboyant and to be extroverted and loud. Someone to bring him down to a level that's calmer and more relatable to the voter. So it's not surprising. I think it's a really good choice on his campaign's behalf.
Rick, he's well known in political circles. I don't know what his brand is nationally. Who is Governor Mike Pence?
So he really comes from the social conservative side of our party, right? So he doesn't have a lot of experience on foreign policy, national security. He's not well known as an economic guru. Indiana is a successful state economically. You get some benefit from that. But he really comes out of the social conservative mode of our party. So the Democrats will use that against him, right? They'll say, oh, he's too strident, no exceptions to abortion. I mean, he is one of these guys that, will really excite the social conservatives within our party. The strategy they have is to run up the numbers with Republicans and conservatives in places like Ohio and Indiana and Michigan and Pennsylvania. And so they're making a bet, right? They're making a bet that they're not going to go toward the middle. They're not going to try and get those, independent women or suburban women who tend to be more moderate. They'll be sensitive to his social conservative message, but they're going to try and run up the numbers on Christian conservatives and social conservatives.
Leslie, Donald Trump has positioned himself as an anti-establishment candidate, but for a lot of people in America, let's talk the demographics for a second. When you look, you see two older white men, although Governor Pence is on the younger side of older white men.
That's great. And when we were looking at General Flynn, we were looking at older white Democratic men.
Right.
So,
and I guess the question is, the Republican Party has struggled. Donald Trump has said some inflammatory things. With a Republican Party that is trying to bring in more minorities into the party, people who don't traditionally look like this, what do you make of that?
Well, I think the important thing to keep in mind is that, we don't vote in, especially I would say as Latinos, you don't vote in ethnic solidarity just because it's your race or certain gender. That really shouldn't be the conversation, but is it inclusive? Is the tone inclusive? And we've seen consistently that Donald Trump has not been, which is why you have so many ethnic minorities and women concerned about what kind of national leader he would be. So I think if the tone changes in terms of does the platform look inclusive, messaging, we all believe in smaller government, the big tax cuts that you saw, for example, with Mike Pence in Indiana. Those are very good models nationally, but is he inclusive when he talks about it? If he does that, that changes the game.
And Liz, the reason I ask that is because obviously just with the fact that Hillary Clinton is the presumptive Democratic nominee, that changes the way people look at the folks running for the presidency. Whether or not she goes for somebody who's a minority or another woman, we'll have to see. But in an era where people are trying to say, look, this party represents me, not just a certain strata of society, how does this look to you?
I mean, honestly, at this point, I think they've given up on getting women. And I mean, there's a poll today that came out. I think there's 2 swing states where Donald Trump has 0% of African American support. I mean, that's just staggering. And so I think they didn't even bother trying to get the minority vote in this case. And it's interesting, to your point of this conversation about inclusivity and diversity. One of the things that Donald Trump has been inclusive about is the LGBT community. I mean, supposedly in his speech, he says he's a friend of the LGBT community, really took a stance on that issue. And now his potential running mate is someone who has, gone after this community and actually made it much harder for them to have the human rights and dignity that Donald Trump says that they deserve. So I think that tension will potentially be interesting.
Rick, take us behind the scenes of a campaign right before and after a VP announcement. We saw the pomp and circumstance of the meeting yesterday, the media stakeout of cars parked in front of Governor Pence's house, the Trump family coming out. Just give us a sense of the discussions that are being that they're having.
This is actually right out of the sort of Paul Manafort playbook. He loves to be able to show the decision-making progress of a vice presidential nominee publicly. And so the meetings between Pence and Trump at the golf course a month ago, right, here in just outside of New York, the trip to the house with sort of the phony, oh, my plane broke, I'm going to come spend some time with you. These are all geared toward sort of making it look like it's a thoughtful decision, that there was a process of dating that went along, that by the time we got to where we are today, it wouldn't be a shock or surprise anybody. That's sort of diametrically opposed to the way, for instance, we did it on the McCain campaign in 2008, where nobody knew that we were looking at Sarah Palin as a vice presidential nominee.
I can tell you,
until
no one knew.
Until the minute we put it out. And so it's stylistic, right? They are putting a lot of premium on the fact that they're showing Donald Trump in the decision-making mode. It's an effort, really, frankly, to show that he can get there, right? That he can have a thoughtful process of decision-making that gets an outcome that's acceptable by the vast majority of people.
So is that because it's sort of where we are today? Back in 2008, there were a lot of people that were saying, look, John McCain, compared to Barack Obama, doesn't seem as exciting. And then you had that announcement of Governor Palin. It was like an AC/DC concert. I remember it was just like people stomping their feet. And when she walked out there, not just, I could actually feel the electricity on the television screen. People were just going bananas. Now, that was needed then. You're saying what we saw over the past couple of days was needed now. You couldn't do something like that this time around?
Having never been to an AC/DC concert,
I can tell you.
Any more exciting than the day we announced their Well, there you have it. It might have been the same. But look, I think this is exactly what they wanted. I think they would have rather timed it so that they were making this announcement tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock, like had been foretold by the Trump campaign that they were going to do. But the fact that it's out and the fact that they've been telecasting it, to the media and to the public for the last month shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. If anything, the surprise is, for a change, they didn't pick the surprise candidate. Quayle was a surprise candidate.
Right.
Kemp was a surprise candidate. Sarah Palin was a surprise candidate. Most nominees pick people you otherwise wouldn't have thought they were going to pick. Donald Trump did what was obvious.
The interesting part, kind of to his point, is when you had so much unpredictability, you need predictability. And I think that's the stabilizing force that we have. I don't think the establishment can take another kind of surprise nominee. The whole thing may collapse at this point.
Yeah. Liz, I just want to ask you, we're just days out away from the Republican convention. Our new CBS News New York Times poll has the race in a virtual tie. A lot of people would find that surprising, given that we saw Hillary Clinton's numbers in Colorado yesterday, which showed her, way ahead of Donald Trump. Can Trump see a boost from what is happening today?
Perhaps. I mean, this will give him attention. It's if he uses it to his benefit is always the question that is everyone's on the edge of their seats, especially Republicans. But look, I think the last 2 weeks have not been necessarily good for Donald Trump. They've been bad for Hillary. And so the strategy coming out of it is not to just continue doing what they're doing, but do it better and take advantage of those. The email scandal, I think the Trump campaign could have taken advantage of it way better than they did. But look, that question of trust, that question of she's not prepared or qualified to be president is now out in the ether again. So it's important for them to capitalize on it right now.
All right, exciting stuff. Rick Davis, Leslie Sanchez, and Liz Plank, I thank you all. I'm going to send you a link to an AC/DC concert. You'll see what I'm talking about.
Headbanger, Rick Davis.